welcome in. It is September 15th, 2021. We are recovering from week one, and I am still flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
equally recovering from a winless fantasy football week one. Yay.
Yeah, I've got my big board of primarily failure as I knocked down a DeAndre Swift sign ball. Just, not bragging, just saying that's what it is. 8-6 for me in fantasy this week. Not great, not terrible. I did lose to my wife, which is kind of just a kick in the knackers, but that's a different thing. Joel, you mentioned winless. How many attempts were there on that to win one?
0-5.
Yeah.
0-5.
The good news for Joel is if you look up top, he did beat me in the pick'em 9-7 with my lousy, dismal, awful, god-awful 7-9.
We're both still trying to figure out what the heck happened to Baltimore on that Monday night game. Good God.
So we will be going over last week's games first. Talk about any big news and notes. The big news from last week is the season-ending injury to Raheem Mostert. He is out for the season. Chipped cartilage. He's going to have surgery.
Originally, it was thought that he would just be out a few weeks. No, it's the whole rest of the season.
Yeah, so he's gone. Elijah Mitchell was the big waiver wire ad of the week. I don't know if I agree with that move, honestly, because San Francisco likes to use committee. Jeff Wilson coming back. Trey Sermon was inactive. He may be playing next week. Only time will tell if that's the right decision.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that you tend to get caught up in the heat of the moment. It's the hot, sexy waiver wire ad, and you don't know whether or not it's going to be the next big thing, or it's going to be right there with Devontae Booker or Alexander Madison last year.
Yeah, this doesn't feel like the James Robinson last year where, oh man, I just got a guy who's going to win my league possibly. No, it's just a guy. All right, so we will start with one of the surprises of the week. Houston, they won a game. That is one more win than I thought they would have all season. Given it was against the Jaguars, they did have 3 defensive interceptions for Houston, which matched their 2020 total. I'll repeat that. 3 defensive interceptions, which matched Houston's entire 2020 defensive interception total of 3. They beat the Jaguars 37-21, and it was not even that close, Joel.
As the Jaguars might be the worst team in the league, you have you can't count on Cooks, Ingram, or even Taylor. And you just have to wonder. I mean, both teams. I mean, a fantasy enigma as you're trying to figure out what goal to mine from this one. I mean, obviously, Trevor Lawrence and his wide receivers still look good for fantasy, at least as when it comes to garbage time. And then, of course, you had Robinson had almost twice as many snaps as Carlos Hyde for everyone who was like, yeah, add Hyde. Yeah. But Hyde, on the other hand, had 11 touches to Robinson's 8. So that's kind of troubling because you're trying to figure out the whole touch distribution. But the bottom line is the Jaguars are not a good team. And Houston, they got the dub, but I don't think they're any great shakes either.
No. Buy low on Robinson, honestly. Carlos Hyde had a lot of touches when the game was over. Don't think Robinson's going anywhere anytime soon. He's still going to be the number one option. Next up, as we were talking about garbage, we're going to talk about the trash can in Justin Herbert. They do win the game 20-16, but Joel, remind me, how many leagues do you have Justin Herbert in?
Unfortunately, at least 2 that I know of that pop off the head that I'm going. That I was really, really high on him, and I'm not quite as high as I was before, but I know that I have to be very, very careful to taper my either overreactions or my expectations just based on 1 week.
Yeah. Herbert, a good yardage game, 337, a touchdown and an interception. Nothing spectacular. I mean, he wasn't the worst quarterback we'll talk about this week, guaranteed. But a little bit underwhelming for somebody who took so early. 20-16 over the Turds. Gibson, a little disappointing. I think the worst thing out of this game is the injury to Ryan Fitzpatrick, a hip subluxation.
It's Heineke time.
Yeah, it's Heineke time. If you don't know what a whatever it is, a hip subluxation is, that is similar to what Tua Tagovailoa had in college. Is not as severe, but it is a similar injury to what he endured, and he was out for the rest of the season. I have an early candidate for Cursed Fantasy Trade of the Year. In Dynasty, I traded away Ryan Fitzpatrick in a second-round pick for Logan Thomas in a third-round pick. So at this time, the person switched a second for Logan Thomas in a third. So that kind of worked out for me.
Yeah, and you better believe Larry Roundtree without the D is a definite waiver wire target if not already picked up in some leagues.
Yeah. Next game up is Seattle in Indianapolis. They came in, they took care of business. Seattle 28, Indianapolis 16. Russell Wilson looked like early season Russell Wilson last year. This week it went to Tyler Lockett, Mr. Boomer Bust himself. He had a monster game, which means for the next 2 weeks you can probably sit him on your bench without any real issue. The Colts, Zach Pascal is the player that people are scrambling to add from this roster. I think it's kind of a fluky thing that he got the touchdowns, but 28-16 Seattle in this one.
And Russell Wilson looked like Russell Wilson, even though he only ended up about 23 passes. So that's kind of a little bit concerning. But the real thing that comes out of this game is not a surprise that Rashard Penny went down with a calf injury. That's going to cost him at least week 2. But on the flip side of things, Chris Carson looked every bit the part of a lead back.
Yeah, if you can get Chris Carson on the cheap still, go ahead and do it. Next up, New York Jets going to Carolina, the Sam Darnold revenge game, and it was as exciting and exhilarating as you may have thought. Carolina does win 19-14 in a game that was really just not a whole lot of anything. Christian McCaffrey had a very solid day. He actually led in PPR scoring for running backs without scoring a touchdown, which is the second time that has ever occurred. The first time was also Christian McCaffrey. So, yeah, if you want to try and get someone who's very good, get Christian McCaffrey. 89 yards receiving on 9 catches, 98 yards rushing. And, other than that, not much excitement from this one, Joel.
The one thing that sort of stands out is that you were kind of wondering why all this Corey Davis hype. 2 scores, including the long one in extended play. As for right now, if you've got him, he's a must start until he isn't. It's just sort of one of those things that you just got to ride.
Yeah, Corey Davis with the 2 touchdowns. We are going to do a 3 lesson segment a little later, and we will have more on Corey Davis, at least on my side. So that's a little bit of a tease. But yeah, Corey Davis did have a 2 touchdown game. There were only 2 touchdowns for the Jets, so that's a pretty good ratio. They are playing the Panthers again. Panthers were not expecting to be a great team. I said they'd be a surprisingly average team, somewhere around 7-10, 8-9 kind of thing. I think we all expected the Jets to be terrible, and they were. Mekhi Becton going down with the injury. Going to be bad for the Jets going forward until he comes back, if he should come back.
Sort of a hold your nose game when you have Wilson on one end and Darnold on the other.
Yes, and then the first overtime game of the season was between Minnesota and Cincinnati. Cincinnati winning on a 33-yard field goal as time expired in overtime, 27-24. And for what it's worth, our favorite player combined for both of us, Joe Mixon, had a pretty solid day. Let's see what he had. 29 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown, chipping in 23 more yards on 4 receptions through the air. Jamar, I can't see the football because there's not a white line on it. Chase, 5 receptions for 101 and a touchdown. A good day all around. Joe Burrow, 20 of 27 for 261 and 2 touchdowns.
And on the flip side of the ball, you had Kirk Cousins throw 40 9 times, something that I'm sure that they really didn't want. But when you're having your defense just getting pushed around, there's not much else you can end up doing. And in regards to the whole Joe Mixon thing, who looked like a workhorse, the question with that is how long does that last?
Well, the question with Joe Mixon isn't whether or not he's a workhorse or a good player. It's how long can he stay healthy? Usually the injuries rear their ugly head, and he is just in deep trouble down the line, and he causes problems for fantasy managers. Also worth noting, 2 touchdowns for Kirk Cousins, both to Adam Thielen, who had 10 targets, led the team in targets, also chipped in 9 receptions on those 10 targets, and 92 yards with those 2 touchdowns. So a good play, someone that I liked a lot. Didn't get him as many places I would like, but got him in the Megla Bowl, the 15,000 entry tournament. I am also first place in my league on scoring, and that's at the top of the board as 1-0. Also in that league, someone tried to offer me Mike Davis to get Javonte Williams. If someone offered you a trade to get Javonte Williams from you, please reject it unless you're getting a grade A stud back, because hold him for 3, 4, 5 more weeks, and you will have him in your starting lineup. Also note, he's playing Jacksonville next week. Might be in your starting lineup this week. I've got him over Myles Gaskin in one league right now. All right, next up, probably the most surprising result from the early window. Not necessarily that the Cardinals won, but the fact that the Cardinals absolutely stomped the Tennessee Titans 38-13.
Yeah, your boy Henry and his team looking like mortals.
Well, the problem with Tennessee is when they fall behind, they're not built or equipped to come back. They fell behind by double digits very early on, took Derrick Henry largely out of the game plan.
Murray just making it look easy.
Yep. Out of respect, Kyler Murray jersey on today, because he absolutely did kill it. He killed the Titans 21-32, 289, 4 touchdowns, 2 of those to DeAndre Hopkins and the other 2 to Christian Kirk. Pretty balanced on the yardage. DeAndre Hopkins is the high at 83. AJ Green the low at 25. Everybody else right between them, so you distributed the ball pretty well. Chase Edmonds and James Conner both had a role. Chase Edmonds was the more explosive option, both with 16 total touches. Edmonds 106 yards, Conner 53. Keep that in mind. That is double the yardage. So if you are trying to figure out who's going to get the work, I think Chase Edmonds is going to be your answer there. But the big win for the Cardinals, and again, the Titans fell behind early. They were down 24-6 at halftime. At that point, you have to abandon the running game. Derrick Henry, 17 carries. That is suboptimal for the Titans. Expect that to get better in more future weeks, depending on the opponent. If they get blitzed and run out of games like they did this week, Derrick Henry is going to be a massive bust, but I don't think Tennessee is going to get run out every single week. Remember, this is week 1. There are teams that didn't play their starters in week number 1 or in the preseason before week number 1. They're still catching up to speed. We will get to one of those teams that notably did not play their starters in the preseason and got stomped in a little bit.
Tannehill, Henry, and Julio Jones all couldn't keep up with the Joneses. One Chandler Jones just being an absolute one-man wrecking crew. Just because you can attribute that to why you're looking at the fantasy score sheets, and they're all a bunch of goose eggs or pretty darn close to it.
Yeah. Arizona, a hot waiver claim on defense. They play Minnesota next week, who had their issues with the Cincinnati pass rush, and I would think in week number 2, Minnesota's going to have to be better. Arizona, though, Chandler Jones could have a massive start to the season, even more so than he already has. Next up, San Francisco 41, Detroit 33, a game that really wasn't as close as the final score would indicate. The Niners were up by multiple scores. The Detroit Lions made a furious rally at the end to get back within 8. Debo had a massive game. Possibly the biggest bust of week 1 based on where you drafted him. Brandon Ayuk did not hardly see the field. No targets.
Ayuk was not on fire.
Yeah. Trent Sherfield had better time than Brandon Ayuk. You were taking Ayuk in the 5th and 6th round in certain drafts. Not a good start for him. The Lions, though, honestly, Hawkinson was great. Swift was great. Williams was great. all in the passing game.
Especially with garbage time, the nemesis of most fantasy players out there.
Yes, garbage time can be a beautiful thing in fantasy. It doesn't matter whether the points occur when the NFL game is close. As long as those points occur for you, that is a good thing. DeAndre Swift, though, a massive game, really all around. They did see a little bit of Trey Lance. I don't think that's a whole lot to worry about quite yet. But
Swift stock up and Hawkinson stock up, definitely.
Yes, Hawkinson was probably the tight end I was highest on coming into the season, besides Darren Waller, which we'll get to when we get to that game. And it showed. He is their number one receiver. I think DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams are probably their number 2 and 3 receivers, and then you get their actual receiving core. All right, now we go to one of the early upsets of the day. This was a big game between two very good teams. Pittsburgh goes into Buffalo and wins 23-16. Pittsburgh was down 10-0 at halftime. I remember looking while I was playing my hockey game through the window and saw, wow, it's 10-0 at halftime. Not a very high-scoring game. And then we lost our hockey game, probably because I was busy watching some football through the window. It's a distraction. I don't like it, but oh well. Pittsburgh, they were a team I thought was going to bust. 23-16 winners over Buffalo. Buffalo did not look good. Pittsburgh looked better. Najee Harris got bottled up, but no
with
impact.
Pittsburgh's conservative play calling, that's going to hurt fantasy in a way that's it helps Pittsburgh win games, but when it comes down to fantasy production, that's not a good thing.
Well, my question is, did they go a little more conservative because they were playing the Bills and they know if they go hurry up and they, for lack of a better term, turn over the ball too quickly, Buffalo can blow them out? Or was this just kind of a sign of things to come? Josh Allen, very disappointing for fantasy for where you're drafting him. I said he was drafted too highly if you got him this year. If you have him in Dynasty, you're probably still making out ahead. 30 of 51, 270 and a touchdown. Zach Moss, healthy scratch. I think that was a big surprise from this game. Stephon Diggs, 9 catches, but only 69 yards. You got to think that's going to improve in future weeks. But Pittsburgh had everybody involved. Claypool, Juju actually led the way for receiving yards. Deontay Johnson with the most catches. Total yards go to Chase Claypool with a 25-yard rush and 45 yards receiving.
Is Najee Harris a sell low right now?
You don't want to sell low, especially against a team like Buffalo. Buffalo is going to make a few teams look bad. Najee Harris, first game, bad offensive line against a very solid defense. Give it time. Pittsburgh plays Las Vegas next week. Let's see how he looks against a weaker defense like Vegas. Even though Vegas looked very good on Monday night, they still gave up over 100 rushing yards combined in that game. All right, last one in the early window, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons. I thought this was going to be an absolute shootout, both teams scoring high numbers. Only one of those teams did so, and that was the Eagles winning 32-6. Jalen Hurts, 264 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and another 62 rushing yards. The Falcons looked, well, absolutely terrible, and they deserve
Which is not surprising. It's the Falcons.
Yeah, I figured the offense would be fine. The defense would suck. And, well, the defense did what I expected. The offense, not so much. Not a whole lot of good fantasy numbers out of the Falcons team.
Take a drink every time you hear that Arthur Smith is not going to fix this offense or defense overnight. And
it's going to take some time. I know there are some Eagles fans out there. I work with one. I'm related to one. They're very, very excited after this win. I just want to caution everybody. Pump the brakes. The Falcons were a 4-win team last year. They did not improve on defense. And Kyle Pitts is going to take some time to fully come into play. They did not improve in the draft that much. And, yeah.
So I forget where I heard it, but I'm sorry for not attributing the source, but they said that Kyle Pitts is not playing with Matty Ice. He's playing with Matty Ice Cold.
Yeah, he'll get better as the season goes on, but it's a tough start for the Falcons as they look like one of the bottom teams in the league. Next up, we go to likely the game of the day. Kansas City 33, Cleveland 29. The Browns had a lead in this one, and they kind of fell apart late. Unfortunately for them, they fell apart on a botched punt snap that gave the Chiefs a very short field. gave the Chiefs a touchdown opportunity. Travis Kelce, 2 touchdowns. Pat Mahomes doing Pat Mahomes things. Tyreek Hill doing Tyreek Hill things, almost 200 yards receiving on 11 catches. And the Browns, Nick Chubb, very good day. Kareem Hunt, a startable running back for you. Very good day for fantasy, pretty much all around. No Odell, though.
That was probably the biggest surprise out of that game was no Odell Beckham Jr. as a healthy scratch. So everyone had him starting, kind of going, wow.
And he's already been ruled out for week number 2. Already, Odell is out next week when they play Houston. So keep that in the back of your mind. Next up, oh boy. Well, this is the one I got the most wrong. I said this game would result in a stomping, and in that case, I was correct. However, I said the Packers would be doing the stomping. Instead, they were the one getting curb stomp, boot to the face, bite the curb. I'll be right out. Packers 3, Saints 38. Jameis Winston, 5 touchdown passes on 14 completions. Not even 150 yards, but you know what? When you're up that much by halftime, you don't need to throw the ball that much. Juwan Johnson, 2 touchdown receptions. He's been a hot name on waivers, but only the 3 targets. So maybe not the best waiver pickup with 3 targets. Troutman actually had more.
Something to keep in mind. Adam Troutman had more snaps. So where you're thinking right now, the short-term picture that, okay, no, Johnson had the better fantasy night, but if you're thinking over the long haul, you might want to go with the person who's going to be targeted more.
Yeah, you want the person that's going to be targeted more. Touchdown. You can chase touchdowns all season. Oh, he had 2 touchdowns. Well, there's going to be weeks where Tyler Conklin has 2 touchdowns. There's going to be weeks where Gerald Everett in Seattle has 2 touchdowns. You're not going to go grab these people, throw them in your lineup over people you've drafted who are more consistent. It's just a mess out there for that. But yeah, the Saints look great. Aaron Rodgers, Anybody seen him? I saw a homeless man in Aaron Rodgers jersey running around in the field, but it definitely was not Aaron Rodgers based on the
Was that with or without the discount double check?
The discount double choke. That's the pun I heard that I like the most. The discount double choke the Packers did. A very ugly performance. Devontae Adams not good. Aaron Rodgers even worse. Tanyan, Aaron Jones, name anybody from the Packers. They sucked this week. The Saints, though, they get Carolina next week. Detroit plays Green Bay on Monday night, which would probably not work out well for Detroit, given Aaron Rodgers is probably going to come back to his senses. Again, no Devontae Adams preseason. No Aaron Rodgers preseason. I don't think Aaron Jones played in the preseason. I don't think Allen Lazard played in the preseason. A lot of these guys are getting their rhythm and timing back. Do not panic if you have Aaron Rodgers or Devontae Adams.
So what you're saying is relax?
RELAX. Yes. Yeah, we'll go. We also have a week 1 blame game. We're going to call out all of our crappy players. You may hear Aaron Rodgers' name in that as well. There's a pretty good chance of that. Next up, Denver 27, the Giants 13. Unfortunately for the Broncos, they lose Jerry Jeudy to a high ankle sprain out multiple weeks. I've heard 3 to 8. Let's just call it a month plus at this point. Teddy Bridgewater looked very good in this game. The Broncos' Melvin Gordon looked solid. Javonte Williams had 14 carries. He didn't get a lot out of it, but the Giants is a pretty solid defense up front. They play Jacksonville next week. I like the Broncos matchups all around there. But the Broncos, they beat a team they need to beat. You cannot lose games to the Giants and expect to be a good team. The Broncos are expecting to take a big step this year. So a 27-13 win is big for them.
Yeah, Bridgewater just ended up looking good, recovering from the knee injury, even without, unfortunately, the absolutely brutal injury to Jerry Jeudy. So it'll just be interesting going forward, seeing what he can do. Yeah,
it was the same type of tackle that occurred that caused Dak Prescott's ankle to snap. So very good. It's just a high ankle sprain. It could have been a lot worse. We could have had a new floppy foot this season. We don't want that. Next up, This one felt good. The Dolphins win 17-16 in New England. Jalen Waddle, 60-plus receiving yards and a touchdown in his first game. Xavier Howard, the game-winning fumble recovery on the Damian Harris carry as they were already in field goal range to win that game. Tua Tagovailoa, a passing touchdown to Waddle and a rushing touchdown. Not a whole lot of fantasy impacts in this game. Tagovailoa probably the tops. Myles Gaskin, 9 carries for 49 yards, adding another 27 on 5 receptions. Jalen Waddle, again, 61-1. Devontae Parker, 4 for 81. Again, just not a whole lot of value here. Mac Jones, 29-39, 281 and a touchdown. Damian Harris, 100 yards on the nose rushing, but did have the fumbling problems. And Nelson Aguilar, 5 for 72 and a touch in his first game.
The one positive for the Pats is that Mac Jones should make their pass offense a little bit more viable than it was last year, and anything has to be better than last year.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, Miami has one of the best defenses in football coming back from last season. Next week, they play the Jets, who do not have one of the best defenses next week. So we might see this Patriots offense kind of go off a little bit more than we did last week against the Dolphins. But the Dolphins, the only AFC East team to win, sit alone in first place, which is good as a Dolphins fan.
And you also didn't want to be Stevenson with that very costly fumble when you have a chance to win the game. That's just heartbreak.
Well, the one at the end of the game was Harris. Stevenson had one earlier that got him benched. All right, next up we go to the Sunday Nighter, and oh boy. Well, Joel, if you would do the honors with the song.
What Sunday Nighter?
We're doing the Rams and the Bears.
Oh, the Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. They really, 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 really suck. Yes, the Bears still suck. Plum, plum.
Yes, Rams 34, Bears 14. Sean McVay has not lost a game in week 1 as a head coach. The worst coach in football, Matt Nagy, looks like he's trying to get himself fired, and I am all for it. Andy Dalton just god awful. 27-38, not bad for only 206 and a touchdown. Justin Fields did get two completions for 10 yards. David Montgomery, though, criminally underused. 16 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. If you have a guy going for 6.8 yards per carry, Joel, you think you want to give him the ball more than 16 times. Let him go crazy. Nothing stood out on the receiver end. Marquise Goodwin led the way in yardage, 4 catches for 45 yards. So, yeah, not so good for the Bears. If you don't have David Montgomery, it's probably a time to try and trade out of Allen Robinson. At least I don't see it getting any better. The Rams have a very good defense, one of the best in the league. So maybe it'll improve over time for the Bears offense, but I don't see it.
Yeah, and with the Rams, you're having Woods looking more of a compliment than anything else, as it looks like Kupp is going to be the receiver that we want, at least for right now. Remember,
it's week 1. The sample size is very small, because right now you'd be looking like, oh man, why would I draft Robert Woods? I can get, Van Jefferson, who had a better game. You can get,
and it'll probably be different dynamics next week.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, 20-26, 3 touchdowns on 321 yards. Cooper Kupp, 7 for 108 and a touchdown. He did have a massive 50-plus yard touchdown reception. Same with Van Jefferson, I think it was over 60 yards, 2 for 80 and a touchdown. Woods, 3 for 27 on 4 targets with a touchdown, which saves his day. Higbee, though, 5 for 68. Not too bad out of the tight end position as well. The Rams, though, look like a very dominant team in the NFC. And then we go to the Monday night game.
But we're still trying to figure out that ending, how that happened.
Yes. The hero was Zay Jones, as we all expected, for the Raiders. They win 33-27 in overtime. How can I describe that overtime other than they should have won?
WT bleep.
They thought they scored the game-winning touchdown. He was ruled down at the 1. They get a false start penalty. They move back 5 yards. Then the next play, they throw it, goes through the receiver's hands, off a defender's helmet. This is the Raiders on offense, by the way.
It's sort of one of those,
Off a
if it's in the
defender's helmet
game, it's in the
interception.
game moments.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there watching Josh Jacobs, Mark Andrews on one side of a league for Vampire and Darren Waller on my side, and it's literally going back and forth. Great game to watch. Ravens fall 27-33. Tyson Williams had a very decent game. He didn't get as much work as he probably deserved. 35-yard touchdown in the first half, but then he was kind of pulled in the second half. Tyson Williams, 9 carries for 65 yards, 7.2 yards per carry. Again, Joel, if you can get a guy that's getting you 7.2 yards per carry, you think you want to give him more carries, correct? Yeah. Now, Lamar Jackson, 12 carries for 86 yards, also 7.2 yards per carry. Latavius Murray, though, 10 carries for 28 yards and a vultured touchdown.
With Lamar, are those fumbles anything to worry about?
It's always concerning when you see someone fumbling like that, but I don't think it's a habit to worry about too much. Marquise Brown, 6 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. Sammy Watkins does his week one role. He has 4 catches for 96 yards, no touchdowns, but next week Sammy Watkins will go 1 for 7 yards and we'll be like, yeah, he still sucks. Derek Carr, 34 for 56, 435 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Jacobs missed practice today, quote unquote, out everything. You know how normally you say ankle, foot, knee, head. You
kind of have to wonder
everything.
You have to wonder if you have any injury worries with how gimpy he looked towards the end.
Yeah, he looked real bad. Kenyon Drake, though, 6 for 11 in relief. I don't think there's a big threat there. Darren Waller, 10 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown on 19 targets. And by the way, 3 or 4 of those targets were just missed passes by Derek Carr. He could have absolutely been a little bit better, probably over 150 and 2 touchdowns if he hits them in stride on some of those passes. So that is the week 1 recap.
Or recap, depending upon how your week went.
Yes. So we're going to play the blame game for week number 1. We're going to look back at this week and say, who screwed you most? So Joel, Mr. 0-5, I'm guessing there's more than one name on this list.
Yeah, well, we'll start off with my first 2 candidates from the alternate 10-team league, not Sports Shuffle fans. Yes, my first 2 blames go out to 1, Allen Robinson, and Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, not great games from them. Allen Robinson, I did see benched in some places, which was actually a very smart move. Calvin Ridley, though, that's tough because you expected better from Atlanta. I'm going to do all of mine in one shot because I had a team score a total of 62.82 points, and that includes TJ Hawkinson going for 17.7. Everybody on this team, other than my defense, which is the turds, I'm going to put you on notice right now. Hawkinson had a great game. The turds had 8 points. Those are fine. No problem there. Kicker Jason Sanders. Kickers aren't real people. Doesn't matter. Myles Gaskin, 7.6 points. I expect better. I know the Patriots are good. Not the worst person on this list. Mike Evans from Thursday night. We talked about it last week. 2.4 in non-PPR. Just a garbage performance. Tom Brady did say, though, he's thrown to who was open. You had Gronk with over almost 100 yards. You had Godwin over 100. Brown over 100. Evans will get his. Don't panic if you have Evans. James Robinson. Awful. Just awful. 5.4 points. Antonio Gibson, 8.8. I think that'll get better, especially now that Fitzpatrick's gone. And then the most offensive of all of it. The Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams stack that gets a combined 6.92 points. 6.92 combined from those 2 people. It is absolutely horrific. I'm pretty sure he was out. The combination was outscored by Justin Fields, who was the backup quarterback for the Bears. All of those are just terrible, terrible human beings right now to me.
My next 2, and this was from the 10 team, from the Sports Shuffle fans. Aaron Jones, 4.20 total fantasy points, And yeah, I think somebody had the yips just a little bit. Saquon Barkley, 3.7 fantasy points. Those are my, and not yet my most disappointing one. That's still to come. But yeah, when you're looking at your starting lineup and you're seeing those numbers and you're going, that's why I got my butt stomped.
Yeah. Also, anytime you see a negative number, that's not good. I had Stephon Diggs go for 6.9. He's a first or early second round pick. You expect better from that. However, the reason my wife beat me is she played the Saints defense, which got a total of 15 points. I played the Green Bay Packers defense, thinking Jameis Winston's for sure going to throw some picks. Green Bay -4 in a 9.96 point loss. All they needed was an average 5 or 6 point day. And I
would imagine
game.
Brittany might have mentioned this a time or two over the last couple of hours.
No.
Or like every time she saw you.
Yeah, pretty much. Tyson Williams had a good game. 15.4.
How's it going, husband? Who I just kicked your ass, something like that.
Yeah, positive on that. I did at least play Jameis Winston, Chase Edmonds, Tyson Williams, who had a decent game. Nick Chubb. So I did what I could. I was still one of the higher scoring teams in the league. I finished, I think, 5th in scoring this week, which with a couple of people busting in a negative defense, I guess there are worse things.
And do you have your number one blame, or do you want me to toss out my number one blame?
Go ahead with yours.
My number one blame is I really tend to feel like because I believe you wanted him in a trade. I believe.
I did.
And I was
Antonio Brown. 4-1 Antonio Brown, which makes it even funnier because he was a monster this week.
And I said, no, Mike Gesicki, I want to hold on to you because I know you are a valued tight end that can put up fantasy points. And for my faith in the 16-team league, my week 1, number 1 most blamed player out of all these, Mike Gesicki, 0 fantasy points. Thank you so much for me going, yes, I want to hold on to you and I don't want to trade you away. And that is how you reward my faith.
Yeah, that's kind of bad. That's real
bad.
Good
God, I mean, I know you're not expecting a lot from a tight end, but you're expecting at least more than nothing.
You shouldn't be able to be outscored by someone like Anthony Firkser, who had like outscored by Firkskers. Yeah. That's not very good. The last one I'm going to say, it's someone I've actually been pretty high on for a little while, and it looks like their time of viability might be coming to an end. It's Tyler Boyd. Just a disappointing week altogether. If Chase comes through, Higgins comes through, he's going to be the odd man out there. Although number 1 really goes to Aaron Rodgers, being outscored by Marcus Mariota, Justin Fields, outscored by several backups, and that's
ouch,
not great. All right, so now 3 lessons, stuff we learned in week number 1 to carry forward.
Lesson number 1, and this will be a good lesson that you had a lot of hype. I drafted him. I know at least in one league. Jalen Hurts upside all offseason. You heard the Hurts hype, and he cracked 300 passing yards twice while averaging 10.3 fantasy points with his legs. And of course, and then you have the situation, of course, with Wentz and the front office and all that stuff. But I tell you what, moving forward, Hurts has to be like you say, set it and forget it quarterback until we see otherwise. And do you agree with that?
I don't, because it's Atlanta. I am interested to see how he does next week in San Francisco, get some tougher competition. But he's definitely making a case, especially if he gets those yardage with his legs. He looked very good against Atlanta. So maybe not a set it and forget it. Depends on your roster. But there's not a whole lot of people you're going to be like, for sure, I got to play over Hurts at this point.
All right. My second lesson, and a little bit of a rough one, as of course you heard all the noise. You heard all the noise about Austin Eckler, 17.4 projected, 11.7 actual, and you just is 51.4% share of the rushing attempts. And you just wondered what happened. Is the backup situation going to affect? What do you do moving forward with such a high profile, high ADP pick?
You got to play him. You got to play him and hope it turns around. I think it will. Washington's a very good defense, possibly the best one the Chargers will play at least anytime soon. So you got to play him. You got to hope for the best.
I actually have an interesting final thought on this, so it will probably surprise you.
All right. And lesson number 3.
And lesson number Trace. Yes, this one you have, of course, a good quarterback going forward, and you're asking, is he the real deal? And then you have, of course, you have a running back going back a little bit on the numbers, and you're wondering what's going on there. The final one, this is probably one of the hardest lessons of the week. Marquise Callaway, 14.5 projected, 1.4 actual. So all you have to wonder is what's the situation moving forward with Callaway flying?
I think he's still going to be a part of that offense. Remember, 14 completions for Jameis Winston last week. That's not a lot. So even if Marquez Callaway would have gotten, 30%, you're only looking at 3 or 4 catches. So it was a low volume game for the Saints. Don't panic. If you have someone you'd rather pick up, he is a drop candidate, but I would give it another week. New Orleans plays Carolina next week. They may see some better opportunity going there. All right, for me, lesson number 1, Darren Waller is the Raiders offense. 19 targets. They didn't even really try to go to anywhere else until they triple covered Waller in overtime. He is on pace for 323 targets, which would be absurd. He's also on pace for 170 catches, which would break the single season record. I don't necessarily think either one of those is going to happen, but I think the Vegas Raiders are going to make Darren Waller the number 1 tight end in fantasy this year. I think the time of Kelsey is over as the number 1 guy, and Waller is going to reign supreme. So keep that in mind. If you have Jacobs, if you have Ruggs, if you have Drake, if you have anybody not named Darren Waller or Derek Carr, Waller is the offense. Lesson number 2, breakfast is very, very important. That might seem like a weird lesson for fantasy. Well, keep this in mind. During the Sunday night game, they mentioned multiple times Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp get to the practice facility early, 2 hours before everybody else, to have breakfast together and talk about football and what they're going to do. The connection between Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford was very obvious. I have that stack in the Regular Bowl team again, first place overall in my league, in my section of that 15,000 team tournament. So if you ever hear next offseason that a quarterback and a receiver are having breakfast together every day, try and get that stack. Apparently, that's the key to success. Breakfast is the key to success, kids. And number 3, I teased it, it's Corey Davis. He had a great game for the Jets, and that is why it is time to sell Corey Davis right now, immediately. Pause this, go trade him away, then come back, and I'll tell you why. All right, now that everybody's back. Corey Davis, he's very inconsistent. He was inconsistent with his time in Tennessee. He does have drop problems going back, and probably more to the point, Jamison Crowder and Keelan Cole are coming back from the COVID list. Jamison Crowder is a very good wide receiver. He will take a lot of the volume that went to Corey Davis. Keelan Cole will eat into that as well. Denzel Mims is hot garbage on that team. He is not a factor. He was the number 2 receiver last week. Keep in mind, Corey Davis had a near monopoly on receivable targets last week. He really was the only good pass-catching option for the New York Jets. The Jets are going to be bad. They're going to throw the ball a lot. But when it goes to, man, he had a great game, the Jets are still bad. Remember, the Jets are still bad. That doesn't mean Corey Davis is going to be a terrible player all season. He's going to have weeks like this where he had, 2 touchdowns. He had a solid game receiving. His stat line was 5 catches for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's solid. However, number 2 receiver for the Jets. Joel, any idea? Braxton Berrios. Oh, Braxton, that guy. Okay, number 3, Denzel Mims, 1 catch for 40 yards. Then Tyler Kroft, Ryan Griffin, Michael Carter, Ty Johnson. That's it. Who was the competition? Elijah Moore, 1 for -3. Was the only other person to get a reception. Who was the competition there, Joel?
Competition?
Nobody. There was no competition for receptions. He was the only target. So when Jamison Crowder and Keelan Cole comes back, he's not going to be the only target, the only viable target. He did have 7 targets, made 5 receptions, just like Braxton Berrios. I guarantee he goes down to 3 or 4 targets per game. And then you're looking, well, does he score a touchdown or not? His value is as high as it's going to get. You drafted him for next to nothing, most likely. Now is the time to trade him away and get something a little safer at wide receiver. Someone will buy high, trade, and sell him away right now. All right, so that is it for our prepared remarks. Now we'll get to ramble on our own in what we call our final thoughts. Joel, go ahead with your final thoughts.
My final thought is my one thing that I had go right for me in fantasy football week 1. My one thing was sort of one of those things that sometimes you have to wonder as you're listening to all the noise out there. Okay, do you pay attention to the noise or do you ignore it? For some reason, everything going on with Austin Eckler in my Flea Flicker League, that's easy for me to say, I decided to pay attention to the noise. And instead of starting Austin Eckler, I started Melvin Gordon. Austin Eckler, of course, scored 11.7. Melvin Gordon scored 19.8. I got my ass totally handed to me 5 times, pretty much in fantasy football week 1. But the one little sliver of light of hope that I have from the week was I started Melvin Gordon over Austin Eckler, and it actually worked. I still lost, but it worked.
Yeah. We still need to do our picks. We'll do that after my final thought. For me, we're going to stick with fantasy. And Zeke Elliott and Mike Evans were really bad week 1. There are going to be players that have a down week number 1 that are solid players. Someone like a James Robinson. I said, don't sell on James Robinson. They got worked. They will get better. They're not going to win a lot of games, but James Robinson is not going to be removed from the game plan. Carlos Hyde got a lot of his carries and touches after the game was out of hand, and they benched a lot of their best players, which is basically James Robinson. Now is the time to go and look for a buy low candidate. Some of the buy low candidates, again, Zeke, Evans, James Robinson. I'd say Javonte Williams for the Broncos. Joel just mentioned Melvin Gordon with a 19-plus point game. He had a 70-yard touchdown. Outside of that, very, very pedestrian. Buy low on some of these guys that are going to be potential league winners down the line. If you can trade Zeke for some second-round guy who had a great first week, maybe now's the time to try that trade. I know I had someone come after me for Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and I said no because I'm like, no, I'm not giving him to you, Chris. I'm not giving him to you. Just not doing it because I believe that they will rebound. Yeah. Anyways, Thursday night football.
It's hard picking the G-men. I have to pick the turds.
All right. Well, to set up the game is Joel has picked the turds. It is the Washington Turd hosting the New York Giants. And even without Ryan Fitzpatrick, I am also picking the turds. Home team, Thursday night. Very good track record. The Giants look terrible against Denver, who we don't know if they're a good team or bad.
My other moral fantasy victory is I ended up getting Jameis Winston in one of the leagues off the waiver. So I got to celebrate whatever I can when you go 0-5.
Yes. So I'm on Washington as well. No Fitzpatrick, I don't think is going to matter. So I'm going to take Washington to win here. I guess a bonus final thought that's not sports related. At some point in the next year, I'm going to be officiating a wedding. I will try and do better than I do this show. Chris, who was on with us a few weeks ago, got engaged over the last weekend. So congratulations to him and Regina. Very good people. Very looking forward to officiating their wedding. And I
can almost imagine a toast from Ryan.
Yes, I will try not to be myself when I do it.
If you're not yourself, who are you?
I don't know. I'm gonna probably look up a bunch of random stuff and just be like, I'm gonna throw this in the thing and try not to screw it up too bad. But yeah. So congrats there. It's gonna be super awkward. Might be Labor Day. I think they're still trying to figure out the venue, which will solidify the date. But they're looking around Labor Day next year, which is also in time for the fantasy draft, which is I think the big reason he wants to do it then. So everybody's already got a reason to be together. It won't be at the wedding. But if you're free for that day, you'll be free around it as well. So yeah, ready for that one. Although that's the team that got absolutely stomped.
Is she into fantasy football also?
Yes, she actually the Little Too Serious. She won it 2 years ago. I have yet to win, and that's the team that put up 62 points. So it's not off to a great start. But my wife is new to that league too. She put up 65, and we play each other in week number 2. So one of us is gonna win. One of us is going to be 0-2 with a very, very sad-looking roster. Anyways, that is our time. And with that, I am Flying Ryan Gilchrist, along with
someone who's still looking for a win in fantasy football, Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
Yes, I play too much, but I had an over 500 week to start the season, and I'm happy. I have.
Can I borrow some? Since you have all those extra wins, can I borrow some?
I mean, if I could, I would, but I think I need those.
I'll even take 2 wins. You got enough. Just give me 2. You still have some more left. You'll still be over 500.
I mean, I think my big goal right now is to beat you in picks and to win the Mega Bowl up top, because that would be just awesome. I don't like if I lose every game the rest of the season in all but that league, but I win it, the 15,000 player league. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good. Don't think I'm going to lose every game, but you never know. So with that,
thanks for nothing, Atlanta and Buffalo.
Yeah. We'll be back with our full picks, I believe, Sunday morning at a very odd time. So we'll be back to do those picks on Sunday morning. And with that, we go.